You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio. I'm your host, Grant Hardy. Once a week, I meet with advocates from the disability community to chat about the topics that matter most. If you're listening on AMI Audio, today's episode will repeat every 6 hours until tomorrow, plus our show is available on all major podcast platforms. This week's episode is a special extended feature on an event I covered a couple of weeks ago in Burnaby, BC. Makers Making Change hosted their first annual Holiday Hackathon. If you don't already know, Makers Making Change is a program offered through the Neil Squire Society in British Columbia. The hackathon is part of this year's Hacking for the Holidays campaign, where volunteers come together to adapt 250 toys to donate to kids with disabilities across Canada. I had the chance to attend the event to take in some of the action. I met people associated to the toys in all stages of their production, from the inception of the program to the adaptation of the toys and to the people who get to interact and benefit from the toys. The first conversation you'll hear is with Reed Schrad. Reed is the web product owner at Makers Making Change. He also oversees BC outreach for the program. Reed told me a little bit about the event and described how the toys are being adapted. Now, before we get into it, I want to share some context. These interviews took place inside a roped-off space inside the Brentwood shopping mall nearby the food court. My guests and I are seated on single couches facing each other. In the background are a few long tables where volunteers are seen working away with tools and toys in hand. Throughout the interviews, you'll hear a lot of standard mall noise and chatter, and from time to time, the lighting may fluctuate due to the ceiling window above us. On my lap is my Humanware Braille note. Without further ado, here is the conversation with Reed Schrad. Thank you so much for joining us today. Wondering if you could introduce us to Makers Making Change and a little bit about your role.
Absolutely, thank you so much. My name is Reed Schrad, and I work at Makers Making Change in a split role. So I do outreach part of the time, hosting events and helping facilitate events like the one that's taking place behind us. And then the rest of my time I spend developing the makersmakingchange.com website. So that's a place, that's the portal where people in the community can go and request devices from our assistive technology library for themselves or for people in their lives.
Brilliant. So let's talk about the event taking place behind us. Can you describe what a hackathon is and what's happening?
Absolutely, yeah. So a hackathon is this is the first time that we've attempted a hackathon on this size. So our goal today is to switch adapt 250 toys as well as build 250 switches. And then these will be donated as part of our Hacking for the Holidays campaign. So at the hackathon, what folks do is they come, they're given a safety briefing and an overview of the program, and then what we do is we take a toy apart, an electric toy, and wire in a parallel circuit into the wiring that allows the toy to be turned on with an assistive switch like the one I have here.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. Like for someone who can't even imagine, what exactly are you doing? Like, how do you turn a toy that might not be accessible into something that is more inclusive?
Yeah, so I've got an example here. This is a bubble blower. It's about the size of a volleyball. It's kind of a round, lime green toy. It's a hard plastic enclosure. And at the front, there's a series of little circles that rotate around in front of a fan that creates the bubbles. And so when this toy comes originally, what there is there's a small finger switch located on the back. And it's one of those where you kind of have to like reach your finger in and grab it with your fingernail to turn it on. And so then once it's on, then the bubbles blow and it goes and goes and goes. And so what we did is we took that toy, we wired in a parallel circuit and put in a headphone jack. So it's a 3.5 millimeter jack. And it comes out of the same spot that the old switch was. But this allows us to plug one of our assistive switches in, which this is called our Interact switch. It's our most popular device in our Makers Making Change library. It's about the size of a coaster, and it has a plastic base and a plastic top. And inside is an electronic switch, so it closes a circuit, which allows the power to kind of flow through. So all together, when you plug that into the newly wired switch jack that we put in, then it allows us to blow some bubbles, which I can let you do if you want. My hand is there if you want to press that.
All right, let's do it.
There you go.
Woo! Oh, I heard it too.
There we go.
So essentially, I feel the bubbles
You've got a few bubbles coming your way. I hope not too many.
No. So essentially, it would allow, I guess you could put this maybe on someone's chair, wheelchair, or like maybe someone who can only use the kind of the side of their hand, or like versus maybe that control, the original control, which would not be accessible at all. Is that the idea?
Yeah, so it expands it. It allows it to be placed. So the cord, there's about a 3.5 foot cord on the switch. So that allows you to place it either like in a halo array, near somebody's knee. And on the Interact switch too, there's a number of ports for Velcro straps.
Oh, okay.
So it can be strapped on in a variety of different positions and locations.
So, what are some of the other switches that someone might put on there instead?
Yeah. So we have the kind of our goal with the switches is to provide a wide range of sizes and kind of triggering pressures. So we have a couple of small switches. One is called our raindrop switch. It's about the size of a quarter, and the thickness, a thickness of about 2 centimeters. So it's quite small. It's great for somebody with very limited range of motion that can be depressed with like a fingertip or a hand, things like that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, one of our newest switches, it's not been published yet, but we're in design. It's called the Big Open Switch, and it's the opposite. It's about the size of a like your kind of small plate,
right?
And a really, really big target for the user to hit. So. So a couple different variations in between those sizes as well. The Interact is kind of our Toyota Camry, like the most common one you're going to start with. So.
Right, fair enough. And can you describe the different kinds of toys that are being adapted today? Yeah,
so today we're doing 4 different types of toys. We're doing 2 bubble blowers. One's shaped like a corgi, the little puppy, and then we have the lime green one that I've got here today. We're doing a hedgehog. It's called a Calming Vibes hedgehog. And so it vibrates a bit and sings a little song and is in kind of a soft, plushy coating. And then we did a jellyfish lamp as well. So it's a 9-inch lava lamp. It's a square kind of prism that has LEDs at the bottom, and then some jellyfish that kind of float in some water up at the top. So.
Cute. And one of the ideas is can people kind of like request their favorite toy, or like they go through your library and find something that works, or like how does that process work?
Yeah, great question. On our site right now, in our Hacking for the Holidays campaign, we have the ability to select between like 6 different types of toys. So hard plastic toys are very popular because they're very easy to sanitize after use. But some kids want plushies and things like that. So you can kind of request the general type of toy that you would like, but then we kind of match it based on what's available each year, because it does change quite a bit, like the offerings each year. So.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So I just have a couple questions about the process. It's really cool that some of the volunteers here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it could be someone's first exposure to soldering or adaptation or anything like that?
Yeah. So we've had a number of people here today who it's the first time using a soldering iron, or maybe their first time using a soldering iron since grade 8 or so. So we take everyone through. We have one of our, I would say one of the things that sets us apart as an organization at Makers Making Change is the quality of our documentation. So we have written instructions as well as video instructions that take people through how to do these adaptations so that they can do it pretty self-sufficiently. We had a couple of kids here today. They were probably like grade 5 or 6, and they were able to see, actually the gazillion that I'm showing you, the bubble blower that I'm showing, was made by a group of young girls. So
nice.
Great age range in this group, and really, really great audience.
And do you find that people like what's the process where someone's, maybe a little like hesitant at first, and then by the end they're like, oh, this is so cool, like, do you find it does a lot for the volunteers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of corporate events and team building, as well as a lot of STEM education. And some of the first time a kid solders, and they might be there's a lot of fear with the heat of the soldering iron and just like doing something new. And it's really great to just see the like satisfaction in their faces when they're successful for that first time, and get to build a working switch that then gets distributed out to somebody who needs it. So
I actually think it's really cool to just bring people from the mainstream into the field of assistive technology and challenge assumptions about, a person with a disability could never, do this. Do you feel that really helps the advocacy towards inclusion and universal design?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the main things in kind of the pitch that we talk about with our STEM education program, is that it's not just STEM for the sake of STEM, but it's STEM rooted in disability justice principles and understanding of universal design and understanding of accessibility. So one of the first things that we do when we come on site at a classroom is talk about what assistive technology people might be using that they don't even think of in those terms. And then we have a show and tell with a number of different devices where the kids can guess kind of how things would be used by feeling it out and thinking it through. That's a big part of what we offer and a big part of like what I think sets us apart as an organization. So.
Assistive toys and assistive devices can be just so expensive and really create barriers for people who can't afford them. How is Makers Making Change challenging those barriers?
Absolutely, yeah. The economic inclusion is a foundational part of the work that we do. So today, the event that we're a part of and the hackathon and the Hacking for the Holidays campaign overall is funded entirely through donation. So we do a large amount of fundraising to make this possible, whether it's selling events, like team building events for corporations, or through individual donors. And so that allows us to offer these toys and distribute these toys for free of charge. So last year we were able to distribute 2,000 toys and switches, and this year our goal is similar in that like the 2,000 device range. So.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And what can people do if they want to support financially maybe, or volunteer with Makers Making Change, or get involved in some other way?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an Instagram account, which is very active. We do a lot of work through there. Also come on the site at makersmakingchange.com. On the homepage, there's a list of events, and then you can go kind of into a more detailed view to find events that are in your region. We do operate across Canada, so we have staff in Halifax, New Brunswick, in the Toronto area, in Calgary, and in the Lower Mainland here in Vancouver. So a wide range across the country, and we're doing events throughout. I think we have 200 events scheduled for these 3 months here for the Hacking for the Holidays campaign. So.
Can we talk about the distribution? How and when can people get their hands on these toys or register?
Absolutely. So there's a number of ways that we distribute the toys that we're hacking here today. So the first option is we have great relationships with a number of different rehab facilities, childhood development centers, and places like that. So we work with the OTs to distribute these out throughout the areas that we operate. Additionally, if you're interested in a toy for you or someone in your network, you can go to makersmakingchange.com, select the Hacking for the Holidays page, which is you'll see it, and then from there there's a request a toy feature, and that's where you put in your name and address. And for anyone in Canada, we'll be sending those toys out in mid to late December, and those will be in the mail. You'll select the type of toy as well as the type of switch that you would like, and there's information about all of that on the site there.
Brilliant. And just one last thing, what impact have you seen? Like first time someone's playing with, a new toy, anything like that? Like, how does that feel for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first time I did a delivery of a set of toys, and I had done some adaptations, and I think one thing that didn't strike me, that I hadn't thought of, was just how much fun the kids have when they get to turn a toy on themselves. Like, I underestimated the amount of laughter and joy and just giggling that brought about, and it's like a big moment. So I think that would be one thing that stood out, was that first delivery, and just understanding what an impact the ability to turn something on and off in your environment makes. So
yeah, have some control over your life and what you're playing with as well, instead of just someone else having to do it for you. That's huge.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the great work that your organization is doing, and for joining us on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is my pleasure.
That was my chat with Reed Schrad, who gave some brief info on how the toys are adapted. But let's take a closer look at how the switches are being installed. I caught up with Charlie Kiers, one of the volunteers at the assembly table. He gave a quick overview of one of the toys being adapted. It was a plush toy by Fisher-Price called Calming Vibes Hedgehog Soother. This is a sensory toy designed for newborns and babies up to the age of 2. The toy is oval shaped and is about 8 inches in height, 5 inches wide, and 3 inches deep. The hedgehog is cream colored with smooth fabric at the front where its face and stomach are. Its outer shell is a fuzzy, soft material that is turquoise in color. The hedgehog has big, sewn-on eyes with a smile. It also has small ears and hands. On the front of its belly is a sewn-on musical symbol. This is where the child would press its belly to trigger music and vibrations. To activate the toy's sensory functions, an adult would have to turn the toy around, open the fabric casing, to then access the mechanism inside. On that mechanism is a small switch that needs to be turned on. The mechanism is a small box that can be opened up. Inside is the motor, a small fan, wiring, as well as a placeholder for batteries. To tell you more about the adaptations being made is Charlie Kiers. Let's hear what he has to say.
So the goal is to, instead of it being a big button on the back, which is a bit clumsy, we're going to take a piece of wire and we're going to put it through the side, solder it into the back of it, and the wire that comes out will have a smaller button for the child to be able to push much easier for this to make the music or to vibrate or both. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. We use a lot of tools today, so we have a soldering gun, which is the most important, so don't touch that, it's very hot. We have a screwdriver just to take the screws out, put the screws back in again. The other tool we have is a wire stripper, so we have to strip the wire in order to solder it inside. And then we have a cutter where we use it to cut. We're going to use that just to cut the wires to the right length. And that's basically all the tools, plus our hands. Yeah, so the layout basically, we start with the regular toy. We take out the middle part, the back part. And so on the table is the guts, the motor, the main part of the toy. So what's on the table is the main part, and then we take, basically take the screws out of this. So this comes in with a button, it's on like that. We take it off of there, and then we basically take this off of here. Now, the original item, originally they had, so this cable here is what we had added. And then we would solder this in here with the soldering gun and the soldering wires. So we solder that, and then so that's basically adding. So it used to be this button, so now we're just adding this electronic piece, which we can then plug in the button to make it much easier for a child to just push this button. The important thing is to put it back together properly. So Originally, we had a cable here that was hitting the fan that we had to turn on, but we figured it out, and then it just turns on this little fan here, and that's what does the vibrating.
Brilliant.
And then the music itself is inside. We don't do anything with the music. It's just turning on the vibrating option and the music option together. Final steps basically were just to put the box back inside here, shut off the back. We had to install this push button to the cord that we had soldered in there and made it happen. And so now you can still push the button as it was normally, but there's also this new button that's about the size of a quarter that you can also push much easier to make the toy work.
Charlie Kiers was one of the many volunteers who was on site that day. The hackathon was operating all day with a turnover of volunteers every 90 minutes. This included a 30-minute overview on how to make the adaptations and a 60-minute period to apply the adaptations. More experienced volunteers and staff walked around the tables to provide guidance, assistance, and help wherever needed. One of those folks was Ethan Ho. Ethan is a student in his last year of high school. Here's my conversation with him. First of all, thank you for joining me, and thanks for being on the show. Just curious how you got involved in Makers Making Change.
How I got involved in Makers Making Change? Yeah, so I first started off volunteering at an event kind of like this. There was a hackathon where me and actually my whole family went to build and put together some, it was a joystick at the time.
Okay.
And I guess that would eventually be connected to a PC or anything else, and yeah.
Right, and allow someone to control a computer in an adapted way?
Exactly.
Do you remember, like, I guess what inspired you to, or how your family decided to participate in a hackathon?
Right. My dad actually saw an opportunity. He saw the event and signed us all up. So I didn't have a choice at the time, but after that, I guess after hearing what Makers Making Change did and what their, I guess, missions and goals were, I thought that, what they were doing was, it sounded like a great thing that also had something to do with electronics, which is something that I was interested in, and I still am interested in. So after that was when I decided if I could see if there's anything else I could do beyond that one event.
Right. So you've worked with Makers Making Change in the past. This is not your first event, I believe. What kinds of stuff have you been able to adapt over the months?
Right. So at the beginning, when I first started, I guess I didn't have too much of their trust, so I was sent to just make, I guess, simple buttons and switches. And then after maybe a few weeks of that, I got moved to, I guess, quality control, where they took toys and devices that were made at, I guess, events such as this hackathon that maybe didn't turn out the way they were expected to, and maybe weren't working as they should, and they put them in a box, sent it to me.
You know, there are nowhere near enough adapted toys out there, and some of them can be way too expensive. So just curious, like, how does it feel knowing that you're making this kind of difference in the lives of kids with disabilities?
Honestly, it feels really great, especially because I think one of the great things is that I enjoy doing this stuff as well. So being able to do something that's fun to me and also is able to, I guess, make this difference is actually really cool. And especially some of the things I've done here is I've made, I guess, these individual projects from start to finish directly for people that requested it. And sometimes I'm able to, I guess, deliver it to them by hand. And I think it's great being able to talk with, like, I can actually chat with the person that I'm giving the assisted device to. And it's really cool seeing their reactions and how, I guess, thankful they are for the thing.
Yeah, I'll say that's really exciting. So you show up, with the toy or the product. What kind of reactions do you usually see?
Mostly just thankfulness that I was able to get it to them because, I guess these toys can be hard to get a hold of. And also, even if you can't get a hold of it, it can cost a lot of money. So I guess it would be the same way I felt if I were to get something for cheaper for free.
And sometimes they're just so scarce, right? That you get some really cool toy, you get to play with it for a few months, whatever that it is, but it's on loan, so it's not actually yours. So that's really cool about this is that you're giving a child something they can benefit from, and it's really theirs.
Right.
So this fits right into your sort of background here or goals for the future, I think. Do you mind just telling me a little bit about you and where you're hoping to go in the future?
Right, so as of right now, I'm hoping to study engineering in university, mechanical engineering. I guess that's the plan for now. And I guess down the line I want to get a career in engineering as well. And hopefully, I've certainly learned a lot about electronics from this, and also, I guess some of the things that are done, being able to see what's being done behind the scenes at Makers Make and Change. The few times that I have been able to go into the office has been it's really cool seeing that could be something I'm doing in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure it kind of is going to be helpful in engineering to be able to maybe have some background that other people don't have, or just understand that things can be done instead of just saying, no, this can't be done. Like sometimes there are ways of doing things that people might not think about or realize.
Yeah.
Why would you encourage other people, maybe even who are a little unsure at first, why would you encourage people to volunteer?
Well, it's more like, it would be harder to discourage someone to volunteer here, I think. I guess everyone here is really nice, and this is certainly a place that beginners can start with as well, but if you have some more experience, you can certainly do a lot more advanced things as well. So it's great for people with all skills to participate in. I guess just knowing that everything you do at this event, or at an event like this, volunteering at Makers Make and Change, everything you do is going to be appreciated throughout the community. Like even if you just build one toy, that could be one toy sent to a family, making a child's Christmas or something.
You're listening to The Pulse on AMI Audio. I am sharing some coverage from the Holiday Hackathon event that was put on by Makers Making Change, a program through the Neil Squire Society. You just heard from some of the volunteers. Now let's hear from some of the folks who are benefiting from the toys, starting with Marie Brown, an occupational therapist with SET BC. Marie chatted about the importance of equitable access to inclusive play. Here's my discussion with her. Thank you so much for joining me today. Wondering if you could share where your passion for assistive technology and this kind of work came from.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. I've been an occupational therapist for about 12 years now, and I've had a variety of roles in different practice areas. I've been working in assistive technology for the last 5 years or so, and even as a student, I knew I was really drawn to it just because it is such a practical aspect of practice. Like you can, with the right solution, improve someone's access and function in a really direct and meaningful way. So I really appreciate that part of it. It's super creative, and that's been a really rewarding part of my practice always, is thinking outside the box, cobbling together materials, and looking at reducing barriers to access for people. So assistive tech is just such a challenging practice area. Always changing, and that keeps me really stimulated and really enjoying my work.
Definitely always changing, but leveling the playing field more and more as well. Can you talk a little bit about your role at SET BC?
Yeah, so I work for Ministry of Education Provincial Outreach Program. We're hosted by the Vancouver School Board, and I have a real privilege of being an occupational therapist on the team. So I work with students and teams all across the province, and I consult on assistive technology to help support physical access. So physical access to devices, so computers, mobile devices, AAC, so alternative and augmentative communication devices. And SetBC has a big loan bank of equipment, so we help figure out what the right match of technology is, and then we're involved in helping promote just access to curriculum, to participation in school and play. So that's one of the reasons I really love Switch Toys and the work that Makers Making Change is doing, because a lot of it is about access to leisure, access to enjoyment and participation, and that's just such a big part of being a kid at schools, playing with our friends, being creative, communicating. Yeah, so very passionate about what we do at SetBC.
Totally, and that's the thing, is that we're always so focused on like the reading and whatever, getting access to the curriculum. But can we talk about just like the importance of equitable access to toys for child development?
Yes. So play is just a human right, I would say. Access to play, the ability to be creative, the ability to play alongside peers and explore toys, sounds, textures. So the work that Makers Making Change does in terms of the range of toys that they provide and the range of switches too, they've really thought about many different functions and lots of access needs. So for me, it's important to go to school and meet your curriculum goals. And it's equally important to go and have fun and express yourself and engage with your peers. So for me, neither is more important than the other. I think they're just both super, super important. So we always want to have a participation goal in the service that we provide.
Yeah, 100%. And how would some of the Switch toys that are produced today or in similar hackathons, like how would you use this in your work or kind of integrate it into a child's life?
Yeah, well, as an OT in my current role and in my former practice, I worked at GF Strong Rehabilitation Center, and so I worked in assistive tech there too. So I was working with teens and adults in that context who are using switches to access their devices, like their phones, their tablets, their computers, call bells, communication devices, all that stuff. So there's quite a range of switch access skills and things you can do with one or two or more switches. And so Makers Making Change, the work they're doing to make that more affordable and accessible to the people that need it is really remarkable, and that's something that I really respect about their program. We know how expensive assistive tech can be, and there are so many barriers to accessing it for folks who need it. So the way they've designed toys that have like a sound experience or a visual experience or tactile or a combination of them is really something to meet a variety of needs. And the switches too, like they've done so much great work around making really light touch switches, large target switches, or switches with tactile toppers so you can differentiate them with tactile abilities, proximity switches that you can just come up near to. It's incredible. So just seeing that become more accessible. They just have so many great uses of Switch toys, and for development, I mean, having a child learn that a part of their body can make something activate or make something happen in their environment is super motivating. And in my practice, like we often look at switch access for, again, like access to curriculum and play, but that all starts with cause and effect and understanding what happens when they activate a switch. So I recommend Makers Making Change to the teams that I work with as a way to get really nice, low cost toys in a way that's quite easy compared to other systems where there's like lots of applications and lots of process. But I recommend them just as a way to explore that cause and effect and to build physical access skills before we start looking at some of those other switch access skills.
Yeah, and I know you talked about, cause and effect and making something, be able to create or play with something in ways that you maybe weren't able to before. I'm also wondering about like the social aspect, even with siblings or peers, even if they don't have disabilities. I find people often really get a kick out of the accessible toys as well, or just develop a relationship with the disabled child. Do you find those social impacts? Have you seen that in your work?
Yes, yeah, 100%. I just received a donation from Makers, and one of the big hits for the classroom was a bubble blower, and so the student would activate it, and then of course everybody's like moving and dancing and trying to pop the bubbles, and there's just like immediate joy in the room, and people are brought in by that. So yeah, the access technology is so impactful for the people who are using it, but it's even better, for bringing other folks into play. And people are so curious about Switch adapted toys, or Switch adapted gaming is such a big thing right now too, and adaptive gaming, and another one of my passions. So I've worked with Makers Making Change on that as well. So that's a really nice way when you can do that shared play using video games, which is, not a hard sell for kids to be playing video games with their friends. So if we can make that super accessible and affordable financially, I feel really, really good about practicing in assistive tech when it's something that, caregivers and families and community members can go out and access easily. But absolutely, there's a big part of like community building in the classroom. We're kind of exploring adaptive gaming clubs in schools, or ways,
really cool.
to intentionally bring groups together to play. So Switch toys, just a piece of what's going on for Switch access and building community in schools.
Oh, that's brilliant. And building community and really changing assumptions too, I would think. Like, I never thought, I could play a video game, using this kind of control.
Yeah, totally. And it's just about finding the right match. And there's good team discussion with the student, with the people who know them best, to figure out what that right match of technology is going to be.
Wondering about the adult volunteers too, getting people into a situation where maybe they haven't thought about assistive technology as much before. Like, do you think this is something that challenges their assumptions about what disabled people are able to do?
Yeah, it's, because I've been working in assistive tech for a while, I sometimes, I guess if I'm spending too much time in my office or on the road and doing the administrative work, I forget how amazing it is and how there's still not very much exposure. And the tech, thankfully, is becoming a bit more mainstream, thanks to folks like Makers. So people are starting to see it more. I was visiting a school recently and showing them how they can play and pause videos with a single switch, and that was just mind-blowing to folks. So the fact that a student could do that with like a sip and puff switch, or a proximity switch, or their toe or their elbow, or part of their face, or wherever they have function for activation, is remarkable to people. And I think it is helping people reframe misconceptions about access. Yeah, so technology is constantly improving, and it's just nice to see it out there more. So, adaptive gaming is a good example, and Switch-activated toys. Just as we see them becoming more available online, more affordable, we're going to see them more out there in the community. But I do find, showing someone how to play music with a Switch is still, it feels revolutionary sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And giving kids more opportunity, and also just more control. Like, why would I want, you to pause this video if I can hit a button and do it myself, right?
Yeah, or this song is terrible, I'm going to skip to the next song, or it's empowering, and I feel really lucky to just be a part of the process of getting that equipment to the right place.
Brilliant. Anything else you'd like to share today about Makers Making Change, or your role here?
Just, encouraging folks to check out their website and get in touch with them. There really is, just what impresses me so much is that the files are available for people who might have access to a printer or some techie people in their lives, but they're a really responsive, approachable organization in my experience, and very creative. Like if someone out there has a need for a certain type of topper for a switch, or a different kind of switch, they're really open to getting a maker are involved in making something brand new. So to me, I think that's one of the most wonderful things about them. Their things are open source, they're super creative, they're open to making changes and requests, and they're really keeping up to what's needed and what's popular. So really encouraging folks to just find out more.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and
pleasure.
for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to meet you.
That was Marie Brown, an occupational therapist with SET BC. She and I chatted at the Holiday Hackathon put on by Makers Making Change. As I mentioned earlier, the event had volunteers come together to adapt 250 toys. These toys will be donated to kids with disabilities across Canada. I had the chance to meet with Evie, a child who has benefited from one of the toys through the Makers Making Change program. Evie was joined by her mom, Carrie Lotz, who I had a chance to speak with. For context, Evie is nonverbal. During the interview, she sat beside her mom in her pink wheelchair watching a children's program on her mom's smartphone. Here's my discussion with Carrie and Evie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was wondering, to start, if you could just share a little bit about Evie and your story.
Sure. Evie is 4 years old, and Evie was diagnosed 2 years ago with Rett syndrome. It's a genetic neurological disorder. And basically, she was progressing fairly typical, and then at about between 6 months, I started noticing there was some things that I have 3 older children that were not quite the same as them. So we went through the process of our pediatrician, and then we went to BC Children's Neurology Department. Essentially, we got her diagnosis of Rett syndrome. Rett syndrome is a progressive disorder, so she basically went from having words and having her hand use to losing her hand use and losing her words. And Rett syndrome basically affects all aspects of her life, from mobility to hand use to spoken language, and then to a host of medical issues as well, which you don't have to get into.
And I just want to thank you for opening up and sharing your story. One of the most important things growing up is toys and playing, and I imagine probably before Makers Making Change and these sorts of opportunities, what was that like? I'm sure it was very challenging to find adapted toys.
It was, and so honestly, one of the hardest things with Evie's diagnosis was the loss of her hand use and the ability to play with toys, because obviously for a 3-4-year-old, that is such a big part of their lives. I have 3 older children, and toys, it was lots of toys and playing with it. So it just made her world quite small, and then obviously I started looking into alternatives, and I'd gone on to some of the adaptive toy websites, and the costs were I think they were triple, quadruple the same price that you would pay for that same toy on Amazon. And then I was told about this organization, and they gave us a toy that I think they said was adapted for a quarter of the price, and giving her the ability to now access this toy that you can actually play with, because it's a Switch adapted toy.
And tell me more. What kind of toy? What's your favorite toy?
So her favorite toy is actually one from Makers Making Change. It's a sloth. It's a Linkable sloth. It lights up, it sings songs, it makes music, it dances, but it's got 2 little buttons to access that. And so obviously she can't push those buttons because her hand functionality, but she is able to hit switches. So they adapted the toy for us, and now she can smack the switch and the toy will light up and do everything it's supposed to do without having to push the little buttons, which she can't do.
So it would be like the palm of her hand that she...
Yeah. So she actually, unfortunately it gets harder and harder, but so she would basically just smack very rudimentally, sometimes with a 2-handed smack, but it does give her the ability to turn that toy on and make it play without having to, have that finger, being able to have to push the little button. So,
gotcha. And is this something that, what's the process of kind of working with them to get a toy that would meet your needs?
With the Makers Making Change, yeah. So, for us, I just actually called the number and was asking about them and had told them about a toy, and I brought the toy in and they adapted it for me. So for me, it was I don't know if that's the process for everyone, but that's what happened with us. So, and they actually gave us these 2 little adapted switches to go with it that I think they'd made in a 3D printer. And those switches alone also, there's a big cost to those. So for very cost-effective way, we got a toy that Evie plays with. And I have to say, not only does she play with that at home, but she's brought it to school. She goes to preschool, so she's been able to bring it to preschool and kind of engage some of the other kids. So it's kind of opened up, a world of engagement for her at home, but also at school where the other kids can come around and she can show them her toys and how she plays.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about kind of the social aspect, and I would imagine this is probably something that other kids find very interesting, yes?
Yes, they do, and so we have this wonderful preschool Evie goes to, and she has a wonderful little group of kids, and the preschool actually I got some adaptive toys there for Evie, and I have noticed the other kids love to engage with Evie and these toys, so they're all playing with it, so it just makes that sense of inclusivity for Evie, so she's not feeling okay, I can't participate because the other kids want to play with these Switch adaptive toys because they're so cool. So I feel like it's just opened up her world at school and at home.
How did it feel seeing Evie playing with the toy for the first time? What was her reaction like, and how did it feel for you?
Yeah, it was honestly, it's been heartbreaking to watch her go through losing the hand, and so when you get these little wins, finding something that she can do on her own and that I don't have to always do for her, it's amazing. It's not just amazing for me. I have 3 other kids and my husband, and being able to watch their sibling, their little sister, have this access to toys. It was actually really emotional. I think I burst into tears when I came into Makers Making Change to get the toy, just because I was so thankful for their organization and providing this ability for Evie to now play with toys like any 3-year-old wants to play, but when you don't have hand use, you can't access them. So, yeah.
And similarly, how does it feel to know, so often we can be good about that, the curriculum at school, but oftentimes kids with disabilities sit out, during playtime, and how does it feel just knowing that you have some inclusion there at school where other kids are engaging?
Oh, huge. That is honestly one of my fears sending her to school, was what is she going to do? Because so much of school for them at that age is play-based, right? So it's all playing with their hands and maneuvering and manipulating toys, and not being able to do that. That was a concern. But I brought the sloth in, and then we actually had a few other adaptive toys, and so she is able to interact in a lot of the activities they do. They've actually adapted an art thing where she can do art with an adaptive toy. So she's able to do that. And the other kids now, they want to hit that switch too, and do it instead of doing the regular way they were doing it. So and they love it. It's really brought a huge sense of inclusion for Evie, being able to have these adaptive toys at school with her in this play-based community that she's in.
That's something that I always find incredible, is just how interested people are in assistive technology once they see it or are open to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you describe a little more about the other toys you've received?
So, we had a sloth from Makers Making Change, but we have used other adaptive toys through the preschool, and I think I'm not sure exactly where they got it. I think there has been there, but she has a adaptive art spinner. So basically, you hit the switch and it helps them spin the art. She has an adaptive little teddy bear that counts and does letters. She has another one that you hit it, and it's a little penguin game where the penguins hop up. So, that's just to name a few.
So someone who's maybe a little unsure about volunteering or hasn't been exposed to assistive technology in the past, why would you encourage someone to get involved with Makers Making Change?
I would encourage someone, because I can tell you it's helped. It's opened up our world, Evie's world, but also it has benefited our family. It's benefited her preschool. It really has been life-changing for us, having access to toys that she can play with, as not just me having to push the button for her. So it's opening up her world to be a little bit more independent, because I feel like that's something that she loses a bit without having the hand use or the word. So anything that I can do to help her feel a little bit more independent has been amazing. And so for people to volunteer their time to give my daughter and all the other children and families access to play and engage in these toys is amazing, and it really is life-changing for families like us to have access to toys for our children to play with.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. Anything else about the hackathon or Makers Making Change that you'd like to share?
I think I just rest that in that last part. It's just, it really is so important for kids to play, and they should be able to play. And sometimes cost does get in the way. So the cost is, it is a factor. And I think when you've got organizations like this where you've got volunteers volunteering their time, it's huge, and it opens up a world for kids to be able to play and be just like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old playing with their toys.
Thank you so much for being so open and for joining us on the show today.
Okay, thank you. So nice to be here.
That was my conversation with Carrie and Evie Lotz, a mother and daughter who have accessed adapted toys from the Makers Making Change program. I spoke with them, along with all my other guests today, at the Holiday Hackathon at Brentwood Mall in Burnaby, BC. If you want to learn more about the Makers Making Change program, you can visit makersmakingchange.com. There, you can find all the information on donating to the program or how you can make a request for an adapted toy. That website again is makersmakingchange.com. That's it for today's show. It was produced by Andrika Delanerl, filmed by Amit Tandon, edited by Mark Aflalo, with technical production by Podstarter. I've been your host, Grant Hardy. Thanks for listening.